So how many of you are left-handed? The average population apparently lands somewhere in 10%. 10% of people who prefer to write with their left hand, eat with their left hand, use golf clubs and hockey sticks with their left hand. Now, even amongst them, that's not very clear. My sister, for example, does a few of those things with her left and a few of those things with her right, but she's not really ambidextrous. So why am I talking about left-handedness? Well, I think it's a really great analogy that we can draw into this conversation today around homosexuality. It seems today like there's a group of people who still feel that homosexuality is a sin, it's unnatural, it's a choice, and it's something that needs to be taught out of people who are living that way. We only have to go back about 100 years where I could have used all four of those descriptors for left-handed people. It used to be that if you were born left-handed, you would be taught to use your right hand. And in some circumstances, you would be taught using punishment. Even within our language, we can see these roots are deep and they go back a long ways. Did you know that the word sinister actually roots from being left-handed? And the root of the word dexterous refers to right-handedness. So even the roots of language that we have still address that to be left-handed was bad and to be right-handed was good. So why do I draw that as a comparison to homosexuality? Well, as we are studying more and more about how human brains work, how human bodies work, how our relationships work, how our understanding of our own sexuality and genders, we are learning that very little of that is up to choice, and almost none of it is up to learning. There's a huge part that simply comes from how you were born. And it doesn't seem to follow hereditary lines either. And so in that way, it's actually really similar to the way we used to look at left-handedness. The other really neat thing is if you can go back in time and look at statistics, you will see that in the 17 and 1800s, if they bothered to even take statistics on who was left-handed versus who was right-handed, it's a very, very low number because A, people were told they shouldn't, B, it was taught out of them, and C, it was thought to be evil. So even if you were left-handed, you would never admit it. Fast forward a couple hundred years, and that's exactly where we find ourselves in the 80s and 90s. It was not socially acceptable to be gay. It was certainly taught out of a very large number of people. And so if you were doing statistics, it would have come out as a very, very small number of people who would admit in a statistical analysis that they were gay. Today, we see that is starting to change. Homosexuality, it looks like it's on the climb. Statistically, there are more and more people identifying as either homosexual or gender fluid or any number of the different conversations as we're learning to address better who we are, who it feels like we are, who we relate to best, who we are sexually interested in. All of those things are now healthier and more open conversations. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certainly still places in this world where it is dangerous to name yourself as anything other than heteronormative and cisgendered. And so our statistics today follow a very, very similar pattern as it used to be the way left-handedness did. So my question for you is this. Do you look down your nose at somebody who is left-handed today? Is that something that you feel like, oh, they're just choosing that and it's a sinful lifestyle? Do you behave that way? Is that a natural process of how you were taught and how you were socialized? If not, the next question is, do you feel that way around a person who's a member of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community? Do you feel like it's a choice they're making? Do you feel like it's a sin and it should be taught out of them? Do you use words like hate the sin but love the sinner? Because those are exactly the ways that people who were born left-handed used to be treated. Today, we know that left-handedness is not something to even be considered. We have reshaped society to make that absolutely socially acceptable. It barely impacts anything other than, because there's only 10% of them, lots of parts of our world are kind of aimed towards right-handedness, but it doesn't have that same social stigma anymore. So which side of this conversation do you want to land on? This change is not going to be quick and it's not going to be easy, and it will take some internal work. Left-handedness took 2 or 3 generations to move from being socially unacceptable and considered evil to being something we don't even consider anymore. As our society and our culture continue to work on this, I invite you to wonder for yourself, which side of this historical conversation do you want to land on? When you look back on yourself in 30 years from now, do you want to be proud of what you said and what you stood for? Or do you want to realize that somehow you missed the boat? I love you all. Happy Pride. See you later.